Hey everyone, it's Dr. Neel Desai here with the Happy Doc, and I'm here with Dr. Taylor Brana.
Woo woo.
And we're gonna switch it up today. We're gonna flip roles, and I'm gonna be interviewing Taylor for a change instead of Taylor interviewing a guest, and kind of interviewed Taylor on his he's finishing residency, psychiatry residency. So congratulations to Taylor.
We did it.
Yeah, we did it. It's like it did great. So we're gonna hopefully do selection, some lessons learned, some mistakes along the way, as we always do, and hopefully we can give you some value and learn some lessons and how we can move things forward for our what we're doing here. So Taylor, how are you feeling?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to finish residency. I've been here in Philadelphia for, I think, since I was 17 years old. So I've been here for 13 years, which is really crazy. Not here. I mean, I'm not physically in Philadelphia right now, actually.
Right now,
Yeah,
my house,
but yeah, I've been in Philadelphia for 13 years, and it's been like a really long journey for me and a really big process. But I'm absolutely excited to finish this step. You know, it's one thing to like think about becoming a physician. It's one thing to think about the process of what it's going to take to go through everything, but it's another thing to literally go through college and stress out about how to get into medical school, and then get into medical school and complete medical school training, and then get super nervous and anxious about trying to get into residency. And then, you know, completing residency is such a huge step. I'm like so grateful, excited, a little bit nervous, of course. I think it's going to be a big change. But yeah, I think that residency is definitely really tough in a lot of ways. I'm thankful that my training and my specialty specific were not as heavy as some of the other specialties. So I was able to have more of a lifestyle that I could enjoy during the process. But yeah, like, dude, I'm so excited. And yeah, and I'm hoping a lot of the next steps in my life will go through. And I'll be able to you know, really enjoy being and attending and my next steps in life.
So where you headed? Why don't you tell our listeners where you actually are going?
Yeah.
so
So yeah, if everything, fingers crossed, if everything goes through properly, I'll be actually moving to Hawaii. And like, I'm very excited about that step. It's a dream of mine to be able to practice and help people, but also have a really great lifestyle. So I'm hoping to enjoy being, you know, being able to wake up, go to the beach, you know, enjoying the sun, enjoying the good weather.
sounds awful.
Yes. And then also helping people along the way. I think that's going to be a really great step for me. So I'm really excited for that too.
Congratulations, that's great. Yeah, I think part of it is like, I think just as a reflection, just knowing you all these last couple of years doing the podcast and everything, I think one thing that's true for Taylor is that he lives kind of what he preaches. He lives that out and like going after it. And I think that's one of the things that we all can learn is like, if you want to go after something and talk about things and living that and taking the actions to do it and then backing that up. I think you do that. You embody that. So I think that people can appreciate. Yeah, people can appreciate that. So yeah. So today, what we're doing is we're flipping it, kind of reversing a little bit, and just kind of like do a reflection kind of thing over the last couple years. Now that, like you were saying, you're finishing your training in Philadelphia, starting a new transition, and I think we can relate that to a lot of people who are going through transitions in their life right now. It's been a challenging year to say the least. Last couple of years for everyone. I think that's an understatement, but maybe you can give some insight from your experiences last few years. And one of the questions that I had was, um like, basically, do you have any tips or insights for anybody that's going through a transition? I think we've talked about this before, but now we're at a different stage of your training. uh Anyone starting residency, internship, now that you're on the other side of that, what would be your best takeaways, insights, kind of mistakes, things that you can, like, how would you advise any new somebody that's starting this new in the process?
New in the process. So like specifically people going to residency?
Yeah, let's start with that.
So basically residency, and it doesn't even matter about the specialty, but like I'll just talk about in general. Any transition where you're gonna go through a huge challenge. Residency is kind of like a big ordeal in a lot of ways. You are now going to, and this could be true for any profession where the next step is going to be super difficult. For example, if you're just starting law school, or maybe you're going to be entering a really difficult challenge of some sort. The thing that's specific to medicine is like this is going to be at least 3, 4, 5 years, depending on your specialty. So I think the first thing is just to realize like this is a very extreme challenge that no one will really understand unless they're in your program or in your specialty. So like there's going to be very few people that actually understand what you're going through, especially if you have partners or family members who haven't gone through medicine at all. And you're going to have to be super dedicated to that. And so I think there's just like a kind of a realism and a grounding that needs to happen mentally, is just like be prepared that this is going to be hard. And I'd actually say be prepared that's going to be harder than easier first. And I think it's really important in transition to get really good habits in place. So like, for example, if you're not like really a morning person, and you know you're going to a specialty where you're gonna have to wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, maybe start to prepare your mindset for like becoming more of a morning person, figuring out how you're going to improve your lifestyle. Maybe for me, a huge thing that helped me tremendously was I took a meditation course in medical school, actually. And that set me up for success because whenever you're going to deal with times that are way more stressful than anything you can handle. So you need to have practices or things in mind or a support system or something that's going to be able to reset you. And so I would highly recommend building out practices that are going to let you have a healthy lifestyle, because it's going to be difficult. I would also expect that you're not going to be able to do much on certain. So for example, for internal medicine, when I had to do my medicine months, I was so exhausted. I literally had to wake up, go to work, and come home and order some food and veg out on the couch. I was just so tired. That's just what I could do. So expect to have times where you're not going to be the healthiest, where you're not going to have energy, where you're not going to be able to do the things that are good for you. And that's okay, because that's part of it. And I think it's important for anyone who's non-medical, who's part of your life, to set up the expectations that it's going to be a really tough time and you are going to be challenged. You are going to have difficulties. I think for specific specialties, there's harder times than others. So for example, maybe you're in family medicine and you have some outpatient months. Working in outpatient can be maybe not, the lifestyle might not be as difficult. Maybe it's just like an 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 type of thing. And you might be able to have some like fun and some more lifestyle stuff, things that you really enjoy. On night months, like I had to do, for example, 4 weeks straight of night shifts where I worked 12 hours on overnight, and then I slept or whatever, and then I had to go back and do it again 6 days straight, and I had to do that for a month straight, and I had to do that for 3 months of a year. So I had 3 months of nights, and that was probably one of the most challenging parts of my residency, and I wasn't the same person. I was stressed out of my mind. I was exhausted. My memory was getting worse. I don't think I was working at my peak in terms of decision making. And, it was super hard. So there's just going to be these challenges that are going to be specific to your residency, going to be specific to your specialty. And I kind of took on the mentality of, I would say, like stoic optimism, meaning I accepted my reality. I accepted the fact it was going to be hard. I accepted that it was going to be challenging. I accepted that reality. So then I could have a little sense of optimism when good things happen. I expected that I almost wanted to accept the worst. So if some bad things happened in residency or was difficult, I knew it was going to be difficult and I knew it was going to be hard to handle. And so by accepting that reality, then I could be optimistic when good things, I could celebrate and be excited. I think if you have the expectation or set up the expectation, this is going to be easy, this is going to be simple, this is going to be something that is going to be a cakewalk, you're going to be in for a lot of hurt. I think having a lot of that humility is going to be helpful. And I think as with anything, just going to be challenges. There are so many challenges in there for me, personal and professional. and dealing with it all. So my tips are: expect the difficulty, expect the challenge, be ready for the challenge, speak to your loved ones, get into good habits, and make sure that your loved one support system, whomever, are ready for it. And if you don't have a significant amount of support, just be prepared to build that out and be ready for the mental challenge. But I will say that it does get better, as is always said. And as you start to get closer and closer to finishing, it does get lighter and it does feel better. And you do come out of it feeling prepared and trained. And so soak it all in and learn as much as you can. Yeah, those would be my main tips.
Yeah. So just to add on, I love what you said there. I think part of being stoic is also with, I think the way I look at it is like stoic with just being with practical positivity and optimism, where it's, you're not delusional, you don't expect too much.
Yeah.
It's really just this kind of no expectations, just, but also not getting too high or too on yourself.
Right.
If you get it, you celebrate the wins, even if they're little things, and then you build and stack on those.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't get too full of yourself, too confident, because medicine will be very humbling very quickly, as we know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you make a mistake, not like beating yourself too much up where you get too hard on yourself.
Right.
And it's like not going that negative spiral. So I think it's being centered and just trying to stay as close to center as possible.
Yeah.
Where you can, you try to take the good with the bad, but you also try to focus more on moving forward. I think that's important. So that was good. I like that. Couple other things. So what would you say to add on to that? Like personally, I think people learn a lot from other people's mistakes or failures or and successes. What would you say is your, over the last, during your residency, what was your biggest failure? And your quote unquote failure is kind of like a more of a learning lesson.
Yeah.
And your your biggest most successful thing.
Yeah, sure. So the biggest failures, I think I've had several failures, I would say, quote unquote, like failures, throughout the process. I think the times where I would get myself in trouble is if I acted like I knew more than I did, or I have a natural tendency, I would say, is I like to take chances when it comes to things like entrepreneurship and those things. But in medicine and in any field that requires human health, you got to be careful, and you want to think from a kind of safety mindset and making sure that you're doing things properly. So I think there are some times, especially in my first year, not as much in my second year, where maybe I was making some like bold assumptions or things that maybe I didn't think needed to be looked at. So I think it's always important to stay, especially in medicine, to stay humble, always over communicate, always over ask, always ask for additional help first to confirm, especially early on. And that way you gain the confidence. So I think sometimes maybe I might have been a little bit too confident. For example, like maybe in my rush to get through work, I think a lot of times the mistakes happen when I was trying to rush because I was tired and I wanted to get something done, as opposed to being a little bit more careful. So for example, maybe there have been times where I was admitting a patient and I might not have read every minute detail to the point of maybe I missed something that was important in their history that would have provided me a little bit more accuracy in their care. So I think that came up early on. I think the challenges also were, one of the difficult times I already mentioned was like just dealing with night flow, because I am not good at changing my sleep patterns, and I don't think anyone else is. And I think I could have been more successful if I had fully maybe dedicated myself to switching my schedule completely. So I had some difficulties in night float. So just like, again, these are specific to me. And then I think that there's just general challenges of managing communication. I think that in residency, there's, at least for my specific program, there was a lot of supervision. And so sometimes I felt like I was over communicating too much to the point that I felt smothered in my program or highly micromanaged sometimes. And I think, again, I like that's like more the challenge there was me just to be humble, because again, I'm just in a program where I'm in training. And I think the biggest lesson there is just like patience, because you will eventually reach a point where you can be fully autonomous. And so I think just trying to remain as patient and calm as possible.
What do you mean by smothered, by over communicating? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I just think again, I just think that there's again, like for me, I feel like I am at a point where I do feel more confident in terms of being autonomous in the way I practice. And so, I think again, rightly so, in certain programs, you're going to have, like, for example, your attendings checking in on you or supervisors checking in on you. And so I at some points, and of course, this is part of medicine, is when you make a decision, it can get double checked or triple checked or those things. And to me, it comes to a point where, like, I feel confident in my decision making, and so it can feel very micromanagey, and like, why am I re-explaining a decision I'm making 3 times when I know it's a good decision for this person? So I think those are the aspects where it's like I'm at a point where I don't necessarily want to constantly explain myself. But it is important to explain your thought process. That's what I mean. In terms of my greatest wins, I think it came in spurts. I think finishing my last, like, step 3 exam was amazing. Finishing night floats was amazing for me. Finishing my medicine months were really amazing for me. And I think just finishing each year was like a different milestone that, like, was like a real win. And this is like the biggest one of all, is to complete this, and to finish what I'm doing. But yeah, like, there were, and I think the one aspect of the weirdness of where we are right now is we're still in this age of medicine where, like, I still work at one practice where we do paper charts, and I work at another practice where it's all digital. And so I get to see kind of the analog and the digital side of things. And it's just so weird to me that in 2021, that some places still have paper charts, and that created its own sets of challenges as well. Because, as you can imagine, everything's in paper. Papers can go missing, binders can go missing, fax machine work, printers might work, all the things. So, like, the technological stuff, those are other challenges that just made it a little bit more difficult to care. But again, there are challenges that lots of different practices have to face. But yeah, that's always tough.
Cool. Yeah, I think that those are great points. So kind of like shifting over, like, one of the things I'm gonna shift over to now is ask about the Happy Doc podcast,
Sure.
what we're doing here, and how you started it, and kind of where we've been on this, because I joined you early on when you were in medical. For those that don't know, like, I joined Taylor pretty much really early on in the process when you're still a medical student. So it's kind of
Like
been
5 episodes,
in.
something
So,
like that. Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting to watch this process and watch you evolve and watch this thing evolve over time.
Yeah.
And and I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. We both learned along the way that really I don't think our medical training ever taught us.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is stuff that a lot of our fellow colleagues and physicians and listeners can learn from, because a lot of times we have to learn this on our own, the hard way. And so that being said, like, let's go to the Happy Doc podcast, like podcasting and all this. What have you learned from this that that you can maybe, like, give as lessons learned to apply to our listeners for how they can apply the lessons we've learned?
Yeah. So yeah, the Happy Doc podcast, just to give you guys like a little bit of history, was kind of this thing I started around the 3rd or 4th year of medical school. And it was a way for me to branch out creatively, because the big thing that happens when you enter the professional world in some aspects is, especially for medicine or being a lawyer or dentist or anything like very professional, is it becomes like, it makes you feel you're in such a tight professional world, to the point that you can't be, it's so rigid that you lose the sense of your own humanity. You lose a sense of your own self, right? It's like you enter this box and it makes you form to kind of the system. And I know that I was an extremely goofy, creative, weird, unusual, like, energetic kid. And I was always, I'm a very happy-go-lucky person naturally. Like, I'm generally optimistic, and I like to think of things in a way that, like, what can we change? How can we solve this? All this stuff, like all this positive energy that I felt throughout my life. And then I entered, medical school specifically, and I felt like that was starting to drop out, and I was losing a sense of hope. So the podcast came from the space of, let me kind of recapture this sense of like, let me have this canvas, I can do whatever I want in, right? But the beginning actually started much more strict, and I made it very professional in that I was interviewing doctors specifically to ask them their insights in what it takes to be a happy doc. So the happy doc was this like idea of what, like a collage of all of the best pieces of advice that make you this happy doctor, right? And so that was kind of like the main gist of it. And what I've learned through the process, in terms of all of these guests and everything, is that we are human first, and then we are physicians or professionals or whatever occupation second. So your number one thing to do is listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to your needs, listen to all these basic things like food, water, exercise, social, caring for yourself socially, being able to be creative, having a sense of passion, doing things that you enjoy. All these things are just essential to happiness. And we need to defend our humanity. And that comes first. And then our profession comes second as an additional part of the meaning that we create and the purpose that we create in life. And so, like, I think a lot of physicians, especially or professionals, might think that they're a doctor first. But I really do think we need to reverse it and remember that we combine our humanity and who we are with our profession. It's yes and, which is a big thing we talk about a lot, which is I am Taylor and I am a doctor. And I'm not just a doc first, and I still lose Taylor in the process, which is what I was feeling. So that's like a huge lesson. And the way you reclaim that is just to start to pay attention to things that light you up and do more things that push you out of your, comfort zone and let you be you again. The problem arises that some programs will challenge you on your creativity and all those things. So sometimes you might have to bite the bullet. Yeah, it's unprofessional. So sometimes you might need to bite the bullet and just quote act professional, whatever, or whoever you think you need to be until you reach a point where you feel comfortable enough to get out of that situation. And I think it's program specific and it's specific to where you're practicing in your specialty, whatever. But I will say the sooner you can break out and be yourself first and gain confidence in your skill set and who you are, I think that's going to pay off dividends in the future. I think the podcast has evolved into more of like, there's episodes where I'm just doing solo stuff and I'm just talking about ideas that come up, things I've learned, lessons, whatever. And then there's the guest episodes where I get to interview physicians or professionals. So I think now the Happy Doc podcast kind of evolved into like, I feel like a happy doc and I get to, and Neel does too. Yeah. And I think now it's kind of evolved into a place like we're just interviewing really interesting people. So we can apply lessons to the professional space, the physician space. If you're just trying to, learn more about yourself, learn more about, what it is to be on this planet and trying to figure out what are the best things to do to build out your career, your life. And so I hope it becomes this like beacon of inspiration, positive energy, good thoughts, good hope, right? And
also what like an ideal to kind of strive toward. It's
right.
Never perfect, but I think if we can have like Taylor said, a beacon or a light, just like, oh, there is some hope, there is some, and it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we've learned, I think you'd agree with this, is that you were talking about creative, like that canvas. And I feel like that canvas or that creative outlet that makes us who we are as humans gets sucked out. Like we've heard guests say this on our podcast, like multiple, like that creative kind of outlet or who I was got sucked out somewhere along the way.
Right.
And it got put to the side. And it wasn't until years, sometimes decades later, if ever, that until I got like burnt out and quote unquote burnt out, exhausted, that I rediscovered who I was.
Yeah.
Kind of like, but it came at the expense of like health, physical, mental,
right,
emotional, all this other stuff. And I think part of it is also getting past, like you were saying, the stigma of doing something that's going to quote unquote challenge the system,
right,
or be unprofessional. I think there's a way to do it. There's a way to navigate this. And ironically, it's also something funny because I was telling this to like so many of our guests were told that you shouldn't do that. that's not the right thing to do. Whether you're a medical student or whether you're a intern, resident, or someone doing something that's not inside the box, the rigid steps of our training. And the funny thing is, if you zoom out and you look at the end of the process, the end of where they are on the finish line, they end up actually, because they do such a great job, most of them, they do it right, building something for themselves and for the institutions that they were part of. Those institutions that were like crapping on them before are now praising them and saying, you did great, and then you're a beacon of like a great, that make them look good, which is kind of, I just find that comical. That's hilarious.
It's like a paradox. The more inside the box you stay, meaning the more, quote, you stay within the lines of what it is that your field does, the less you differentiate yourself. And the more you stay in line, like, you'll get accolades, you'll become the chief, you'll get this honor and this, that, you'll get this recognition from your hospital. These are all great things. You might be able to further research in a certain area, also amazing. But the more in the box you stay, the less you differentiate yourself. And the less you differentiate yourself, the more you will stay on the beaten path. But if you want to branch yourself out and do something that's creative and unique to yourself, you will establish yourself in a unique niche. So I'm a big fan of being a polymath and learning from completely different areas and being able to change ideas and thoughts and different ways of approaching concepts. And I think that all of those aspects allow you to become a unique professional, a unique leader, and that's what's going to allow you to, no matter where you work, whether it's inside the box or outside of it in a or right on top or whatever, whatever you build out, you're going to have the skill sets to always be that leader that knows so much and is able to inspire people through different lenses. So
one of the things that we always talk about is like skill stacking. And but also the other thing is, ironically, if you know what you want to do, like, hey, I want to go do this, one of the things that the reason we kind of, even though it's a nebulous concept, we're like, what does that mean, be more creative? It's like, you think, oh, it's just coloring books or something, or painting. It's not. I mean, that's part of it, but we're talking about like a bigger concept here. We're talking about creativity. We're talking about like building something from nothing that hasn't existed before. Building something,
or building it better,
or building it better, like just improving upon something that exists, and that kind of creative concept. And it's like, we do this all the time in medicine. Like, how do we improve care? Right? We build on top of that.
So I'll give you an example. So like one of the examples of something that we built out, and it's paused for a little bit, but so the voice technology space is becoming like pretty big in terms of people owning things like an Amazon Alexa and okay, the devices. But like, so for example, if you own one of those devices, you'll know that you can voice command it, right? And so we thought, what if we could do voice command question bank, because no one's done that, right? So we are taking the technology available at the time, and we created one of the first voice-based medical question banks, right? And so that's an application of creativity, right? We're like, okay, medical students need help doing questions and it's super expensive and all this stuff. Let's create a tool where they can ambiently ask and answer questions, right? So we made the MedFlashGo question bank, which we've paused for now because it didn't get the traction we were looking for just yet.
This is part of the improvement.
This is part of the improvement.
Part of the scientific method of like, oh, but where's the attention? It's in the ears, the podcast. So we transition from voice to the ear and audio, and podcast, and we're still gonna do voice. It's just not yet. Maybe later down the line,
right? So this is an idea of applying creativity, right? You take your skill set of what it is that you know, right? So we're not telling people not to get a profession. We're not telling people to not follow an interest, right? Let's say you're like super into art, right? And you have learned certain techniques through your process. Like, why not, for example, if you want to gain more traction or learn more from other people, why not start like a podcast where you get other artists and maybe you hop onto videos and you go on Zoom and you show each other art techniques together, right? Like, oh, this is how I shade. Oh, I shade this way. This is how I drew this. This is, like
this material or this art, the material that you use to
Yeah.
for different paints or whatever, things like that.
There's so many like with the digital world, the crazy thing now is like you just like if there's anyone you want to talk to, you just hop on and you can have a creative conversation. In the world of medicine, if you're a family doc, or if you're a general practitioner and you're just really stumped on the best ways to manage diabetes, why not just have a conversation? Like email a bunch of diabetic or endocrinologists or experts, hop a conversation and record it, and learn about the best practices in the field from endocrinologists who are at the top of their field. There is no reason at this point not to start to entertain this idea of how to apply creativity and technology and the world in a new way so that you can stay up to date and you become like a field expert in a certain area.
And this is what we talk about, the hidden 21st century hidden curriculum. What the thing, it's going to be different for Taylor, it's going to be different for me. It's because like we all have different, obviously I have a son with a rare medical condition. This is exactly what I did with him. Over the last decade, I'd reach out to experts in his field, from every field, from maternal fetal medicine to orthopedics to like dentistry to PMNR to like all these different fields of primary care to pediatrics. So it's like I created my own unique medical curriculum. And I think that's the cool thing is that this is the new age where I think it's going to be more personalized and you can actually learn what's going on, like quote unquote, on the front lines in the trenches, things that you can't just read in a book or watch on a video all the time. It's like, reach out. These are real people and they're willing to like easy to connect with and have conversations. And it doesn't always have to be, but it can be around any specific topic. The cool thing is what we're finding, the reason we talk about all these digital content creativity platforms and creating content is because when you start putting yourself and your interest out there, you attract a community around that. It filters out the people who aren't interested, but then it attracts the people who really are interested. And that creates the serendipity, what we call the serendipity at scale, right place, right time for potential collaborations. For it could lead to real life meetings. Look at us, like that's how we met.
Yeah,
we just connected through online, and then 4 years later, we're like, this is where we are, like 5 years, right? And I've seen this over and over again over the last decade.
Yeah.
So you can create like communities, collaborations for research, and this ironically like it will give you in the real world opportunities that you want to achieve. So if you want to like go into a specific field of medicine or research, go like try to connect with those people that you want to model after, and they're approachable, and you can like at least you'll have a working relationship or like a professional relationship. And that, I think those are the intangibles, those relationships, and the media literacy and education skills, and these kind of hidden quote unquote intangible skills that we don't get taught. If you and just being patient and being kind and decent, if you do that, I think that's 90% of the game.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on. I love what you said there. I just want to add on, like in terms of like communicating with professionals or people that inspire you. I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, it's actually a lot easier than you think to get in touch with people that you interesting. Like I can't tell you how many times, like through Twitter, through Facebook, or through Instagram, you DM someone or you message someone or you get their contact, you message them a few times, and you're able to develop in the beginning, a superficial friendship, but it's something that like it's really not hard if you say like, hey, like this is the one thing I've learned from podcasting. Like now that I've developed a platform where I podcast and speak to people, it's like, hey, like hop onto the Happy Doc podcast, and like, sure, that'd be amazing. So like, times out of 10, it's almost always yes if I want to reach out to someone to speak to them in regards to what they're up to, what they do, what they're passionate about. People love talking about themselves and people love talking about what they're passionate about, because like, for example,
because that's what's been lost, I think.
Yeah.
Because we don't get to be human, because I always say, I always joke, like if you hear me, it's like there's too many third-party leeches in the system. That's what the problem is. So what we need to do is bypass those third-party leeches by getting back our creative autonomy through meaningful human-human connection. What's the answer? The internet, the digital spaces, these creative spaces where we can create, connect, and collaborate for meaningful human connection. That's what these spaces are. That's why I'm such a big advocate, and I'll just scream from the top of the lungs, like, go start. Like, it doesn't have to be find out how you communicate well, You could be like a good communicator through video. If you're good on screen, do video content. If you're good on social, then do written social blogs, social media. If you're good on talking one-on-one, have maybe then do it through podcasts. So that's why I'm like, just find a digital space or medium, and then knowing what you're good at and how you communicate, go talk about what you know and what you love on those spaces, and then you'll attract it, and it just becomes so organically, kind of like it just evolves naturally, that like, and that's the reason I think so many of these doctors or students, that they love it so much, because it's like, because they're doing them at scale, and they're getting positive rewards, positive, so much positive things that they don't get in the day-to-day world of like. So I think there's something to be said for doing this, making like this kind of your reputation online, and then translating that to like virtual, from virtual to real life spaces as a bridge.
So yeah, relating this back to residency and all of that stuff, I just want to say that like, we're talking about a lot of creative ideas, but whatever profession that you're in, whatever specialty you're in, whatever occupation you're in, whatever, even if you're not working right now, but you're passionate about an idea or a topic, or you've naturally been more inclined to think about a certain idea or topic, or maybe you're dealing with something that's difficult in your life, like maybe you're depressed, maybe you're in a stuck place, maybe it doesn't really matter. Like, could you imagine if like you're depressed or anxious and you created the anxiety podcast, where you literally just talked about the daily stressors of anxiety? You hopped on with other people dealing with anxiety. Maybe you get like a psychologist on to talk about how to treat anxiety, different methods, or maybe you just create a podcast about anxiety, but you just created soothing sounds.
Could you talk about, sorry to interrupt you, this just came up in my mind.
Yeah.
That just reminds me of like, it's about being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think the answer to like the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I think the opposite, in the day-to-day real world, we have like masks on.
Right.
And like, whereas in this world, we're unmasked.
Yeah.
Like the people who are truly successful in the podcast, YouTube, all these content, people are, you hear the word authentic, but truly be authentic and real.
Yeah.
So can you talk
yeah. So I think, and it's honestly, it still relates to residency, which is like, if you want to maintain your happiness, joy, and peace, you still got to be a human. And part of being a human is the fact that like humans are one half, if you think about the brain, we have the logic side and we have the creative side, right? And the creative and emotional and all those pieces. So even in psychology, we talk about it like there's the logic mind, there's the emotion mind, and then there's the wise mind. And the wise mind, you have to use both your logical side and your emotional side, and it comes in both. A lot of times what happens in the professional world is you only use logic, you only use rationality, you only use that like logic mind. And so when we don't become vulnerable, when we don't get in touch with our intuition, when we don't sit in our emotions, when we don't express emotions, we become like kind of like a robot and non-feeling, and that doesn't feel good, and that you lose the joy. So being vulnerable, the ability to express how you actually feel. There's this big thing or stigma around, everyone talks about being positive all the time. Well, actually, it's okay to feel negative too. And it's okay to express your negative emotions, and it's okay to discuss difficulties you're having. And so like, that's super important, and it makes you personable because you are a person, right? And you're able to express that. So also it's very important in leadership, because if you want to be a leader, or if you're in a group and you express something that's been troubling you or something that's been difficult, and you're able to communicate that, people respect you more, because like, wow, like I feel that way too, or I've felt that way before. And it makes you able to connect with people more effectively. So leaders tend to be vulnerable and share their feelings or difficulties first, because that offers to the group, oh, this is a person that it's okay to share my feelings with. If no one shares their feelings, that's not an actual team. That's just like that is just, I mean, of course there's a time and place. You're not going to spew out your feelings during a code, right? You're not going to have someone that's in cardiac arrest and you're actively talking about, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared about doing the compressions. You could say like, I don't feel comfortable doing compressions. Can you hop on? Like you do that quick, but you know, the emotions, but you have to have a time and place to. But anyways, back to vulnerability. Vulnerability, I think, is the access point for people knowing that you're a human being. They will connect with you more, and regardless of podcast or in real life or whatever, like if you can't access your emotion mind, and you're just logic, you're not gonna be a real human. If you're totally only emotional and you have no logic, then we get onto the chaotic side where maybe we need to keep, you know, have some boundaries and keep things in check. But you know, there's a balance there.
Yeah, so I think that's to kind of like, I think to summarize, it's like more about having that emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And like knowing when to use it. I think this is part of the thing, is like it's a skill set that comes over time. Like it's like with patience, like when to use like empathy, when to set the boundaries, you know, when to kind of be like firm,
right,
and be like, and it's also you also learn this in just relationships with people. Like over time, it's like there are certain personalities, like managing different personalities,
totally,
who responds well to what motivation. So if I'm trying to tell someone like from a certain their age, their background, culture, whatever, you have to keep that in mind. And when
you have to watch to see how people respond.
Yeah, watch how they're responding, what they respond well to,
what they light up from.
Yeah, are they more kind of like, do they want more kind of like firm discipline kind of thing, and you can just tell them to do it and they'll do it, or is it more kind of like they need to be like kind of like a little bit more slow and kind of encouraged a little bit? So there's different person. I think that's part of that, learning that skill set.
I think that's part about being a dad, huh?
Yeah. Oh, tell me, be a parent. You know, by the way, happy Father's Day to everyone.
Happy Father's Day. We did it, fathers. I'm not a father, but we did it to our, you know, everyone, you know.
Not being a parent.
Congrats. All right. Do we have another question set up here?
Do you have anything, any other thoughts? I mean, I think
Residency?
I mean the main thing was like takeaways from residency, away from training, biggest mistakes, lessons, we talked about that. Boundaries, you talked about that. Biggest takeaway from the Happy Doc?
Well, I can talk more about residency.
Yeah, why don't you talk about residency for a medical student? Anyone.
Yeah, so the biggest thing about residency, I'll say, is I already talked about like the things to look out for and everything. I think the big thing though, really 100%, is just don't lose your soul in the program. It's really easy, I think, to lose yourself, and if you watch yourself getting burnt out or exhausted or whatever, really take the time to always remember, regardless of whatever field you're in, but specifically for medicine, it is always the right thing to recapture your energy. It's always the right thing to take care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself, you can better take care of other people. I think the old-fashioned way of looking at it is you are a martyr and you sacrifice yourself, right? You work those 36 hours straight, you work those 48 hours straight, you work those 60 hours straight to take care of patients. But no, what we're learning with like the literature and the science is there is a balance, and you want to optimize yourself so then you can optimize other people. And also, like, you know,
I would call it, sorry to interrupt, I like the way I look at it is like unbalanced integration, because the fact is you're never going to have 100% 50-50 balance with our training. So I think there are certain times in our training, I think anyone can relate who's going through law, medicine, whatever, these kind of really kind of grueling kind of process, long-term kind of thing, is that you're going to have times where you're going to sacrifice certain things. But as long as your close inner circle knows that, and you set clear expectations, clear boundaries, like, hey, I'm going to be not here. But I think also with that in mind, when you have those things set ahead, those supportive communities, supportive people, and support and clear expectations with communication, I think that kind of goes a long way towards, and then having your routines in chaos, especially now when there's a lot of chaos and uncertainty, which there's just having that same kind of like simple routines that every day.
Yeah, I'm going to give an example of this idea of managing chaos and difficulties. So one of the things that I had a really hard time with in residency was on my medicine months, because you basically wake up, you know, sometimes 5 in the morning, get to the hospital at 6. I have to prepare the list. I have to look up all my patients. I have to go in and see all my patients and do my pre-rounding, what's called, or rounding, like before we actually go in with the attending. I have to prep all this stuff, right? Then I'm working till like 6 or 7. I go home and I have to repeat that. Like that was super tough for me mentally. So one of the routines or habits or rituals that I set up was at the end of the workday, especially with my partner at the time, she had known that I would be super exhausted. So what did I do? I like made it a point. I called it like my meditation blanket. I got home and the first thing I did, I like, because I was like, not, I wasn't just burnt out. I was like emotionally drained, spiritually drained, physically drained. I went to the couch and I just tossed the blanket over my head and I just meditated. Like I had built in, and that's why I'm like super harping on the practice like meditation or something where you can get into decompression mode.
Just
and
in a car.
Well, or just be in the car or whatever. But I think you have to have technology off, and it needs to be just pure relaxation. I almost wish like everyone had like a sensory deprivation tank, right? That's not gonna. It's not feasible. Or go on a nature walk or whatever.
I think whenever you're feeling stressed, one of the biggest stress relievers I found is just going for a 5 to 10 minute walk.
Yeah,
just a walk, just in nature. Going for a walk does what it sounds so simple, but so many people don't do it.
Yeah,
including me. I didn't do it, but when I really kind of made a more mindful effort to do that, changed my life. Just going for a walk, if like it's good. Yeah. I tell everyone, go for a 5-minute walk.
But so for me, this like idea of throwing the blanket over my head and just sitting there and like I needed my 30 minutes, it was a game changer because then I was able to decompress. I was able to reflect. I was able to, because there's some things during that day. What people don't understand is like when you're in medicine or whatever, you're dealing with all these people's trauma, physical, medical, emotional, whatever. You're dealing with a lot of pain. And that's the difficult part about being a human is if you deal with people's pain, but you don't process how you're feeling about that pain, if you don't give yourself some time, that's also why it's really important to maybe get a therapist, like get someone you can talk to just about this stuff, right? Have a support where you can talk this out, because the problem is if you don't process that, you're going to put that into a space. You're going to compartmentalize so much. You're not going to be human. So building in those breaks is super important when it comes to residency. It was hard with COVID and the pandemic, but now that people are getting vaccinated, please get your vaccine. Yeah, but getting your vaccine and being vaccinated, now we can start to think about more about potential travel, like set up something to look forward to. Like,
that's the other thing is always having something to look forward to. Like, it's part of that mindset of just being grateful. Oh, I get to do this. I get to, one of our mentors, David Meltzer, says it's not that when it's like, no, I get to do this today.
Right.
Or I get to go do this. It's just the shift. Like I get to hang out with my friend. I get to hang out with my family. I get to go see a patient, or I get to, do something. And it could be the littlest thing, but it kind of brightens you when you shift it 2 or 3 things. Hey, I get to do this and I get to do like those things that, those 2 or 3 things really make a difference.
Yeah. So having something to look forward to, I think, like let's say, for example, you have a tough set of a few months, maybe just knowing that you have this Airbnb where you're going to go to cabin for the weekend, you might have to put some money down, but saving up and having that space to go to, just having things set up so that you have something to look forward to, set up those achievement points, setting up those times where you can celebrate. I think that celebration is super important. Relaxation is super important. And these things that you're not going to be taught, but you have to have points to celebrate, points to relax,
point of reference,
points to reflect, friends to share that with. And I'll be honest, like when you're in medicine, it's super hard to like maintain friendships and relationships.
Oh, yeah, it's isolating.
I think
that was my biggest struggle, really. I think I've talked about this. It was that it wasn't anything that anyone, it was just the nature of just the process.
Yeah.
Because you're on different rotations, different cities.
It's
sometimes
hard to explain it to people.
Yeah. Because a lot of other training, you're in one place with the same family, same schedule.
Yeah.
Weekends, our schedule are so all over the place, and then you're in different locations and it's like, so you're kind of like on this journey by yourself a lot. And unless you make the effort to kind of maintain those connections, with busy, it's really hard unless it's like scheduled. way in advance, things get. I mean, we talk about this family. Just my family's in medicine, so just scheduling get-togethers,
Right.
right? And it's like, and then, but one of the side effects of that is that then you lose that kind of bonding, that connection, and
Yeah.
you know, and it's hard to really that, and then that contributes to all the isolation, anxiety, depression, lonely, all these other things that really, humans were meant to socialize and connect.
Yeah.
And when you don't, we've seen that with the pandemic, that when you don't have that, amplifies that. So
Yeah.
it's really important to have that, make an effort to do that, find your people, and have your crew, your community, or whoever that is,
Yeah.
your close, the five, the average of the five. We talk about you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
Or we kind of extrapolate that to the five energies you associate yourself with. So for example, like, yeah, so for example, like maybe you don't have five friends you hang out with a lot right now. But maybe your hospital system that you work at is very draining, right? So we can put that as one of, so imagine you're at an environment for 12 hours. You don't think that affects you? Of course it affects you. If that environment is a negative culture, the people around you are negative, the groups of people around there are negative in general, that's one group or energy that's already in the negative slot. So of course you're going to feel more negative. Slot number two, maybe you're not reading any books, or you're not maybe you come home and you're by yourself. And is your house set up in a way that is uplifting, or is your house a mess? Is your space a mess? Are you eating junk food? Is your environment depressing? That's like energy number two, right? That's like, these are the hits to your energy, right? Maybe you're reading books that are depressing, or watching movies that are scary and not uplifting, or the news.
Social media.
So as we look at the energy states, if you're surrounding yourself with a lot of like things that kind of are like, not the most positive, of course you're gonna feel like shit.
Yeah.
It's not like
triage. I was, one of our guests said triage. I was like, triage your energies.
Yeah, triage your energy.
And then we talk about like energy boosters or energy vampires. So it's like, what you want to, it's not, you're not going to eliminate, it's going to be unrealistic to eliminate all the energy vampires in your life. What you want to do is you want to turn up the volume. It's more like a knob. So,
yeah.
Or like like a knob on a stereo. So
yeah,
like you turn that, or like you turn up the volume, or a dimmer switch, like
yeah,
turn up the switch, the volume on things that are giving you energy, that like people, friends, experiences, things that you come away with, you feel energized and inspired and good after that interaction. And you want to turn down the volume on as much as possible, the other things, which some things you just can't get rid of, but maybe you can just spend less time on it.
Stay away from trolls.
Yes.
Like, internet trolls are the worst.
We call it I call it your time, energy, and attention are your most precious resources. So you want more sweet tea and good tea, and you want to limit the bitter and sour tea.
Stay away from the negative trolls and stuff. Look, I mean, and I say, like, when you're being yourself and you're trying to learn more and enjoy more, I'm not telling people to like only stay with positive people, because sometimes we need differences in perspectives, and we need to be humble enough to learn that like there are perspectives that maybe we have and that might not actually fit in certain contexts or areas. Like, I'm not saying that you always need to have easy conversations that are always uplifting. That's not what it's about, but it is delusional. Yeah, it's delusional. But I think it is important to have to reduce the amount of stress in your life, increase the amount of energy you have. Then you focus your energy on things that are important for yourself, for others, for the environment, all those great things.
I think that's good. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I think kind of like just I'm like kind of looking. Neel has some questions perhaps, so I kind of scoped over there a little bit.
We did them all.
I think the most important things, like in regards to increasing energy, is to always, and this is regardless of any field, is to focus on literally the things that are just generally good for a human being. Find a comfortable mattress and make a really comfortable sleeping space. You are sleeping for probably 8-ish hours. As a doctor, any other specialty, you're sleeping for less. Make your sleep super important. Have a night routine, have something to calm yourself down. Have a morning routine or something that gets you energized in the morning. You want to have a good night routine and a good morning routine. drink plenty of water, get 30 minutes of exercise, and find the exercise that works for you by your body type. For me, I do a combination of like some weightlifting, some running. I do like a mix of stuff. That's what works for me. Find some exercise or movement that works for you. Like these are obvious, but it's like true. Eat generally healthy. Stop buying junk food. Stop having overly processed food. Stop having too much excess sugar. Think about the things that you're putting into your body. And I'm not just talking about the food that you put in your body. Think about the people that you're associating yourself with. Think about the books that you're reading. Think about the content that you're consuming. All of that will affect your overall energy. Triage your energy, because if you do not notice, like Neel's saying, these energy vampires versus these energy boosters, you're going to be prey in the negative. And you can only be in the negative state for so long until it affects you to the point that you start to become a negative and start to be in a negative state, and it's hard to kind of get out of that funk. So really pay attention to it. If you can't handle it on your own, get a therapist. There's no problem with talking it out with people, right? There's zero problem with taking time to focus on yourself and your energy and what you need. Education, read on things that are important to you. Creativity, like do things that are creative or things that will expand your mind or challenge you. Push yourself outside of your comfort zone. If you're scared to do something, that's actually probably a good sign. It's a good sign that you're pushing your comfort zone, which when you break through that comfort zone will get you to the next level of yourself. If you feel stagnant, it's because you are being stagnant. You aren't pushing yourself. So a human being requires challenge. Human being requires creativity. Human being, like there's so many parts to it, right? Socialization. Talk to people. It's super with the pandemic, I know, but as people become more vaccinated and stuff, like branch yourself out. Go do things that you wouldn't normally do. Go to, like, if you're not into yoga, but you've been thinking about it, go to a yoga class. If you've been thinking about hopping in and doing a boxing class, whatever, do that. Wear a mask if you need to, but like just start to press yourself. Take action. That's the biggest thing. I
think it's we talk about in entrepreneurship, it's execution. It's not necessarily the idea.
Yeah.
It's the execution. So that means in our world, it means taking action on things that you're instead of overthinking it, just do it. Just go and then learn and adjust and adapt. And
it's okay to plan and think, because we have fear, and that's okay. Plan and think, but at the same time, you need to execute. So the fear will be there, but move with fear, and it's okay to have that fear. But courage is moving in the face, and despite the fear, right? And so like those are all like a lot of basic stuff that I would say. Yeah, I think the best thing is, and again, if you want to go to that next level, talk about like the creativity, the innovation, pushing yourself.
If you have any questions or concerns or thoughts or need some assistance in your way, you can always reach out to either me or Taylor or both of us, and
hit us up.
We're here for you, right?
We're not very far. Yeah, DM us, message. Yeah, like we're here to help people. So, anything else? I think we're good.
So, thank you to our listeners, and we appreciate you 4.5 years that we're growing this thing, and hopefully what we can do is we can kind of reshape medical culture from the bottom up. We're just talking about this and create an ideal model for what it means to be just a happy person or happy professional in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And student, doctors, mentors, that's what we want to do here. So appreciate y'all.
Look, like we're all, I mean, I'm not trying to make this morbid, but we're all going to die. We all are going to be on this planet for X amount of years. I hope that those years are enjoyable. like just like if you're going to be on this planet for X amount of years, yeah, do good things, but also like let's enjoy the process of it, right? Like you're gonna like enjoy your days, enjoy your weeks, enjoy your months. If you're always stuck in fear and anxiety, it's not very enjoyable.
Yeah, you don't want to get to a point where you're like, when I get to, and then you get there, and then you're like, now what? You know, because that actually happened to me, and I don't want that to happen to y'all. So it's like, I want you to understand, it's not about when I get there, it's like, it's going back to, I get to do this, so let me just make the best of it,
Yeah.
enjoy it. No, it's gonna suck sometimes. There's gonna be some challenges, bumps. It's a triathlon mountain climb, but it has a lot of rewards along the way too. So
Yeah.
just enjoy those things, bumps, but and just hold the journey and the process, and just enjoying that as much as possible.
So I think we're coming up on an hour.
Mhm.
If you want to reach out to us, you can check out the podcast. It's The Happy Doc. Our social media channels are Happy Doc Podcast. You can check out Dr. What's your doctor handle? Dr. Neel.
At Dr. Neel 1973. Neel is spelled with 2 E's.
So
Right.
at Dr. Neel 1973, you can find him. He's mostly, you're always on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I'm usually Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Dr. Neel 1973.
Yep.
Just hit us up. We're here. We're live. Where if you need like a pep talk or whatever, you know, or you just need a point in the right direction. Yeah, have an amazing day.
Yep.
Happy Father's Day again. That's when we're recording this.
Yep.
And yeah, we are going to keep rolling with some content, different ideas, different stories, different guests. We hope this evolves into just a continuously fantastic process. We want to help a lot of people, have a lot of fun, make some money.
Exactly. It's all about the originals: health, wealth, happiness,
health, wealth, happiness,
and then creating a great life.
So yeah,
That's
let's keep going on creating an awesome life together. And yeah, have a great day, guys. So
Thanks, guys.
we're gonna close out here.